Venezuela denounces before the international community the illegal entry of a US warship into the contiguous zone. American Airlines is set to lay off more than 25,000 employees, a move it claims is due to the slowdown in air travel in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. India is now the third most affected country by the coronavirus pandemic in the world, having reported more than 1 million cases. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Venezuela, where Caracas has denounced before the international community the illegal entry of a US warship in its territorial waters. In a statement, Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza rejected the statements of the US Southern Command, which claimed that Venezuela makes excessive maritime claims over what it described as international waters. The USS Pinky, a destroyer, sailed through the contiguous zone, 16.1 miles off the Venezuelan coast. The Foreign Minister stressed that this action violates international law and was a clear act of provocation carried out as a result of President Donald Trump's recent visit to Florida, where he met with figures opposed to the legitimate government of Venezuela. And Venezuela has also rejected a report by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, which questions the Venezuelan judicial system and the economic development of the Orinoco mining arc. In a statement, the Venezuelan government rejected the contents, conclusions and recommendations of the Human Rights Commissioner and stressed that the report was evidence of the double standards and manipulation of this international mechanism by a small group of countries in which gross violations of human rights take place. The Venezuelan government stressed that this practice goes against the fundamental principles of multilateralism. Speaking at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, Cuba rejected the latest maneuvers of the Human Rights Council against Venezuela. Cuban diplomat Lisandra Astiazaran condemned the intentions of some to use the Human Rights Council and UN mechanisms to promote a non-conventional war against Venezuela. The diplomat made reference to the report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on Venezuela. Representatives from Russia, China and other nations also questioned the politicization of the issue of human rights and called for an end to unilateral sanctions. In Bolivia, the promotion of military personnel carried out through a de facto government decree has sparked a wave of condemnation from the legislative branch. Through a supreme decree, the de facto government of Janine Áñez promoted a group of officers without the approval of the Plurinational Legislative Assembly. Defence Minister Fernando López is considered to have exceeded his powers by pushing for the promotion of military personnel to the highest rank and disrespecting the legislative branch. In May, military offers demanded to be promoted in violation of the Bolivian constitution. The Brazilian Health Ministry registered more than 1,200 new COVID-19 fatalities in 24 hours this Wednesday, bringing the nationwide death toll to over 75,000. Meanwhile, the number of new confirmed cases reached almost 40,000, with the total now close to 2 million. The southeastern state of Sao Paulo, the country's most populous, remains the worst hit, followed by Rio de Janeiro. Brazil is the second hardest hit country in the world after the United States in terms of both fatalities and cases. Chileans have denounced illegal arrests and the excessive use of police force during mobilizations to express support for the approval of a bill on pension funds. During Wednesday night and into the early hours of this Thursday, Chileans gathered in several cities of the country to celebrate the approval of the bill by the Chamber of Deputies, which would allow them to withdraw 10% of their pension funds in order to face the current economic crisis. They also condemned the limited economic relief provided by the Sebastián Piñera government. Once again, demonstrators were violently repressed by police forces, who made several dozen arrests. Also in Chile, the Court of Appeals in Temuco has issued a ruling suspending the eviction of residents of the Campamento Porvenir shantytown. The petition for protection was issued last Saturday by Mayor Miguel Beca, given the violation of the principal rights of the inhabitants of the area located in Pueblo Nuevo. The Court of Appeals ruling reverses the eviction order against 16 families and the demolition of their homes. The affected residents will now have 2 months to prepare their defence. And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. American Airlines is set to lay off more than 25,000 employees, a move it claims is due to the slowdown in air travel in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The figure represents 20% of the company's workforce. Frontline workers received warnings about the possible job cuts this fall. Among those who may lose their jobs are 2,500 pilots, 10,000 flight attendants and 3,200 mechanics. American Airlines is the world's largest airline when measured by fleet size, scheduled passengers carried and revenue per passenger mile. US President Donald Trump has fired his controversial campaign manager, Brad Parscale. Trump made the announcement on his Facebook page due to the global hack of Twitter. He also announced that Bill Stepien will be his new campaign manager. Parscale had been in charge of Trump's campaign since February 2018. Reports are that the failure to secure a large crowd of supporters at a campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, brought about his dismissal. With less than 4 months to go until the presidential elections, analysts also believe that Joe Biden's lead in the polls is another reason for Trump's decision. On Wednesday, several polls showed that Biden was ahead by 15 points. China's foreign ministry has condemned the US clampdown on Chinese telecom giant Huawei and also criticized Washington's human rights record by pointing to systemic racism in the United States.
I think what it does has anything to do with a war clean. What it does is genuine dirty tricks and dirty play. From where does Secretary of State Mike Pompeo get us confidence to talk to China about the human rights? If he really wants to speak about it, I think he'd better ask George Floyd and the ethnic minorities in the USA what they think about the human rights is our situation. If Mr. Pompeo is sincere, we can refrain from imposing visa restriction on him. We're walking here to visit Xinjiang and have talked there with people of ethnic groups to find out what they think of him. I can introduce him to the few agar friends.
Badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, Spain paused Thursday to honour the tens of thousands of victims at a state ceremony which saw the attendance of top European Union and World Health Organization figures. The memorial took place barely 3 weeks after Spain ended its state of emergency. Since then, there has been a surge in new coronavirus cases, with health chiefs monitoring more than 120 active outbreaks. Presided by Spanish King Felipe VI, the memorial took place in a square outside the Royal Palace in the presence of bereaved families. So far, the coronavirus has officially claimed more than 28,000 lives in Spain, making it the 7th worst hit country in the world.
Este acto no puede reparar el dolor de muchas familias.
This act cannot repair the pain of many families who were not able to be next to their loved ones in their final hours, much less attenuate the sadness of their absence. But we hope it can do justice to their lives, to their contribution to our society, to their memory. We are not going to forget any of those who lost their lives in this painful moment of our history, because memory is a duty. That is the best homage we can give to them, being united in remembering them and building together the country they would have wanted to share.
Firefighters in the Italian city of Palermo have worked through the night searching for people that were trapped in their cars in a flooded underpass after a violent rainstorm. Some drivers and passengers left their vehicles and swam to safety. Sicily's police said they had received no reports of missing people, but rescue efforts were ongoing. At dawn on Thursday, firefighters brought in pumps to drain the flooded area below the underpass. The heavy rain saw at least 1 metre of floodwater gathering in underpasses and lower parts of the city. The German health minister offered statements before the launch of an informal EU health ministers meeting, emphasising the importance of Europe gaining independence in terms of medical equipment and research.
We want to focus above all on the issue of strengthening the European institutions, the ECDC, the European Robert Koch Institute. This will also help the small countries in particular, as colleagues from the smaller countries have made clear. For example, those who do not have a Robert Koch Institute, they say they need more expertise, more opportunities, more information at the European level to be able to act in such a crisis.
The President of the European Central Bank urged EU leaders to do their bit and quickly agree on a recovery plan, as central bank governors held back from topping up their pandemic stimulus package for the Eurozone.
It is important for the European leaders to quickly agree on an ambitious package. In order to reach its full potential, the European Union Recovery and Resilience Facility will need to be firmly rooted in sound structural policies conceived and implemented at the national level. But certainly from our perspective, we very much hope that the RRF in the amount of 750 billion euros that comes on the top of the 540 billion euros associated with the 3 programs already decided and approved by the European Councils, that will come to support the recovery and to look into the future with a view to greening and digitalizing the European economies.
Croatia's president has appointed Conservative leader and current Prime Minister Andrej Plenković as the Prime Minister designate to form a new government following parliamentary elections earlier this month. Plenković's ruling Croatian Democratic Union won the most votes on July 5th in an election held while the latest European Union member faced a renewed spike in the coronavirus cases. The HDZ party won 66 seats in the 151-member parliament, but has garnered the support of smaller and minority groups to form a majority. President Zoran Milanovic on Thursday granted Plenković the mandate to form a government after he submitted 76 signatures in support. A pro-Western party in North Macedonia is poised to try to form a coalition government following a narrow election victory. The Social Democrats, led by former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev, declared victory on Thursday after receiving 36% of the vote, with 94% of ballots counted, according to official results.
Dear citizens, the election is done. The results are confirmed. The Republic of North Macedonia continues on the right path, safe towards the EU. I congratulate each and every citizen who, regardless the world pandemic, has come out to fulfill their civil obligation and their constitutional right to vote. Every voter is a winner of these elections. Everyone who took part. The winner is the Republic of North Macedonia. Our country showed that rightfully is a NATO member and rightfully it is on the beginning of negotiations for EU membership. As citizens and as a country, we showed again our European values. We organized free, democratic, fair and European elections, as it should be for a state that is waiting for the talks for its membership into EU.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Thursday ruled out the prospect of the country attempting to eradicate the coronavirus, describing it as a risky strategy. Australia initially enjoyed similar success to that of neighbouring New Zealand in suppressing the spread of COVID-19 in the early weeks of the pandemic. The strategy has succeeded in New Zealand, but just as Australia was lifting its lockdown restrictions, breaches of quarantine controls led to community transmission of the virus in Victoria State. Morrison said Victoria's daily high on Thursday was a concerning setback, but an Australian eradication policy would be more expensive.
The Victorian situation is very concerning, but as I think the Chief Health Officer in Victoria was remarking today, they are, I think, hopeful that what we're seeing is those figures starting to level out. I said yesterday that I thought this would still be at a high level for some time, but as the effects of the lockdown, I think, kick in, then hopefully we'll see those new case numbers fall. And so, yes, it is a big setback in Victoria.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. India is now the third most affected country by the coronavirus pandemic in the world, with more than 35,000 new cases confirmed in the past 24 hours. The country has now reported over 1 million cases and a COVID-19 death toll of over 25,000. Health authorities highlighted that more than 600,000 patients have overcome the virus. The most affected state in India is Maharashtra, with about 275,000 cases and over 10,000 deaths. And India's private labs are conducting COVID-19 antibody tests as the number of cases continues to soar. However, according to experts, the official figures underplay the seriousness of the situation.
The test for COVID-19 is a simple blood test, and what we are doing here is an automated CLIA platform that tells you the quantitative IgG value of the COVID-19. So this test is suggested and advised for people 2 to 3 weeks after suspected exposure. So it is basically a surveillance tool and not to be used for diagnosis. So from an epidemiology perspective, to judge the herd immunity that has developed in the population, obviously to also guide the public health policy makers, this is actually a huge help in getting to know what percent of the population has been exposed and is unlikely to get infected again.
The African Union is seeking to coordinate coronavirus vaccine rollout across the continent. According to the head of the AU's disease prevention body, John Nkengasong, as soon as a vaccine for COVID-19 becomes available, the African Union will coordinate its distribution on the continent instead of individual negotiations between manufacturers and countries. The official also stressed that the AU is encouraging local manufacturing of vaccines, and should a good vaccine candidate appear, the organisation will ask for intellectual property transfer in order for it to be locally manufactured in Africa.
If there's an available vaccine today, about 7.8 billion people in the world will be in need of that vaccine. So that manufacturing will need to be decentralized as much as possible. And we are very confident that there are groups on the continent that can manufacture, which is different from producing a vaccine.
The African Centre of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases has been at the forefront of the fight against killer diseases such as Ebola, Lassa fever and now COVID-19. The force behind the lab is Professor Christian Happy, who has a strong commitment to helping young African scientists reach the top of scientific research. The lab's 52-year-old director has already set a standard in the battle against the coronavirus by devising a low-cost test for the highly contagious disease. Happy founded his lab in 2016 at Redeemers University in Nigeria. Since then, nearly 1,000 scientists, most of them Nigerians and others from West Africa, have passed through its doors to gain top-level experience in biochemistry and genomics.
Nous, on a fait le séquençage du premier virus de Covid en Afrique dans ce laboratoire-ci en 48 heures. Ça n'a pas été possible. Même en Chine, ce n'est pas possible. Ou en Europe, il n'y a aucun laboratoire qui n'a battu ce record. The natural resources. The wealth of Africa should also be seen in the viruses, in the parasites, and in its natural biodiversity, which includes, microorganisms. And then we should use it effectively, not just as a way to cry to the world that we are infected, but as a way to show the world that we can develop solutions, not only to protect Africa, but also to export the solution to protect the rest of the world.
The Egyptian Foreign Ministry has demanded urgent clarification from Ethiopia following conflicting reports on whether it started filling the reservoir of its giant dam on the Blue Nile River. Ethiopian state television had reported that the filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam started on Wednesday, a day after talks of Egypt and Sudan on the hydroelectric project came to a deadlock. However, later on Wednesday, Ethiopia's Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy denied that the country was filling the reservoir, saying water levels behind its wall had increased naturally due to seasonal heavy rainfall. The two downstream countries have been seeking a legally binding deal on the operation and filling of the dam before the latter begins.
From Egypt and Sudan.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.